I'm going to be talking about bioenergy and some of the research we're doing there, looking at how we can try and mitigate climate chaos. So one of the problems is, at the moment, my slides did not advance, but so one of the problems with bioenergy is that it's an exceedingly complex field. It can couple together with a lot of other technology, and it offers significant advantages perhaps over some of the renewable energy approaches in terms of some platform chemicals, for example, that can be produced from this process. So the driving reason for this research is really to see how we can apply these ideas, processes, systems, and technology to climate change, and also trying to address a problem about growth and still improving the economy, and even looking at how you can improve health through some of these processes. So from a climate change perspective, I think we're all aware of the problems there, and I won't dwell on that, but we're looking at well over 420 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And in terms of fossil fuel usage, that's still about 85% versus 15% for renewable energy sources. So there's a need to try and invert that relationship, but that's another conversation probably. And a lot of this use is obviously driven by our societal needs. And we can see on the right-hand side here, a graph or pie chart really of the different contributors to CO2 emissions. And we can see agriculture there, for example, is about 20% of that overall mix, and energy getting on for 75%. So some of the work we're doing in this respect to look at converting energy into useful forms of power, or gas, or liquid, or for biofuels, for example, is on gasification. And particularly in this project, we were looking at trying to optimize that process through a tar detection scheme that we came up with by looking at fluorescence of tar within that gas stream. One of the problems with tar is it can cause downstream clogging problems with engines. So if you've got an internal combustion engine, for example, you may clog that, and that obviously limits the operating time for the system. So having real-time control embedded into the gasifier system allows you to improve the efficiency of that process and also look at reducing emissions. And you can see the bottom left there, sort of the small system that we made up to trial the tar detection system and different control strategies. Another branch of research that feeds quite extensively into that bioenergy route, but also offers capability of producing products that can impact health, is looking at microalgae. And that takes you towards a concept of having a biorefinery where you're growing microalgae, and you can look at a range of products that come from that. You can have other feedstocks. It doesn't have to be microalgae to have a biorefinery, but I believe this offers quite a few significant advantages. So you generally want a feedstock that should be sustainable, and particularly if you're looking at a biorefinery associated with microalgae, then you want to reduce the energy input into that process and also the water. And these processes at the moment are challenging commercially because of various bottlenecks I'll discuss in the next slide. So we have our inputs to the biorefinery, and we have our output. So we can, as I mentioned, look at higher value products. We can produce liquids or gaseous fuels, and also directly heat and power. But obviously through those output processes, you're going to generate CO2 again, and you can capture that through microalgae as well, or indeed calcium looping, which is another area that we're looking at, which feeds into what John was talking about. And one of the advantages of that process is you can produce a clean CO2 stream, so you can produce products that don't have any nasty contaminants in them, which they may have otherwise. So the major issue with this is scaling up, and that's because of various bottlenecks associated with the processes involved. So algae need light, sugar, nutrients, CO2 and water. And the CO2, obviously we can get that from well-known sources. nutrients. People have looked at using wastewater, for example, and water is another issue. So there's all of these inputs that can constrain the commercialization process for these processes and allow you to develop the process at scale. So if you can do it at scale, you've got real potential to look at serious levels of carbon dioxide sequestration. And we've recently been awarded a project just to look at ways in which we can overcome these bottlenecks from this microalgal processing, and in particular look at partitioning the product that we're producing into different streams. And I think that's a critical area that needs further analysis in order to optimize that whole process. So you're looking at, do you put the product into something useful for gut function, for example, that we're looking at, or do you look at lipid extraction and what that can be used for, and look at remaining proteins into something else. So it's a complex area, and you need fairly sophisticated tools in order to optimize those processes and exploit them, so you can go towards scale. So we're looking at trying to minimize the energy input, those inputs, and also look at how we can simplify the whole process from beginning to end. And a lot of what we're doing is based around real-time control and developing new sensors. And this last slide here, on the work at least, is just from an announcement yesterday from Bayes on their investment of about £4 million into a range of products for phase 1, where they're trying to look at how they can expand the feedstock scope within the UK. So we were successful in looking at trying to automate the planting and weeding of a grass called miscanthus, which the UK government are looking to grow about 1 million hectares of this over the next few decades. And part of that process, we believe, was to look at trying to expand the areas over which you can actually farm miscanthus, and to look at how we could automate that process. So we're using AI, machine learning processes, optical recognition, for example, and building an autonomous vehicle that will allow us to do this. So this is only the first phase, and that is until January. So we've got our work cut out actually to try and achieve this, because the contracts were a bit delayed, but this will be our next challenge. So miscanthus is an energy crop and can be used for gasification, but there are some advantages, disadvantages for that on a global scale. And finally, I'd just like to thank some of my colleagues over the years who have been involved with this work. And thank you very much.